Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. K Show. Today I have Kelly Bryant with me and we are going to talk about all sorts of things, but we're going to try to stay somewhat focused on stretching and recovery and just some different things that you can do to relax and all of that. So just introducing Kelly really quick. She's a Yoga Alliance experienced registered yoga teacher. So we're going to have to dive into what that is. And registered prenatal yoga teacher, as well as a certified personal trainer. And this is my favorite part, a realist. She is committed to helping women understand their bodies, specifically their core and pelvic health, which is why I'm so excited to talk about this today, and adopt a mindset around movement that addresses physical and psychological components. She is passionate about empowering women through all stages of life, from prenatal to postpartum, to take care of themselves so that they can show up and do their work in the world. Prior to quitting her job to travel in 2016, which is so cool, she worked at a health and fitness startup, Noom, where she led content and community marketing efforts and soaked up everything she could learn about psychology and behavior change. Welcome, Kelly. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and just dive a little bit deeper into what led you to doing what you're doing today. And if you want to lead into what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and no, I always feel like
I go back that far.
I feel like I go too far back when I give my background because I'm like, it's all connected, I swear. So like, I studied journalism. I did not study movement science. I did not study, kinesiology, anything like that in college. I studied journalism and I graduated in a recession. Oops. So I was like, gonna go be a journalist, and I moved to New York City, and then I was like, oh crap. There are no jobs in this. So I was briefly actually a writer at the site Greatest, which some people have heard of. It's a health and wellness website, but I started learning. I was not an active person. Like, I was not super fit. I actually always tell people, I'm like, when I teach Pilates, I'm like, my anterior flexion is fantastic because I spent the first 25 years of my life like
literally
this.
hunched like
I'm like,
this.
I have I can forward round so well. Can't back bend to save my life. But I was not an active person, but I started writing about health and fitness. So I started learning about it. I got a little bit of dabbling into yoga. I apologize if you're hearing background noise. And I moved over to Noom, which more people have heard of than when I was there. I was like the 13th hire or something. It was me and a bunch of developers. Like, I was the only non-engineer, or no, not the only. I was like one of two non-engineers. And so I wrote all of the content that went into the Noom Weight Loss Coach app, which means like I was reading a lot of studies. I was learning a lot about like psychology and behavior change and how to make behavior change happen. Meanwhile, I'm working at a tech startup. I'm like in my early to mid 20s. I'm working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because they feed you breakfast, lunch, dinner, and beer. And
for sure,
I had like absolutely no, balance in my life. And I was still kind of dabbling in yoga, and I decided to do my yoga teacher training. And I was sort of like, oh, maybe this is something I'll do on the side. I actually got Noom to pay for half of it. Like, I became an indentured servant. So they paid for half of it, and then I taught classes for the company. So I did the teacher training, and then my husband and I decided to quit our jobs and travel. And it was incredible. Like a year and a half of traveling all over the world. At the end of that time, I spent 7 months managing the yoga program for a resort in Morocco. And I decided when I came back here that I was just going to be a yoga teacher now. I was going to do it full time. So I've been teaching since 2015, teaching full time since end of 2016. And I focus on women's health now. That's like a whole, I'm sorry. Apparently everything in the world is going to go by. I'm right on a roundabout. So everyone goes through it so slowly. I'm like, go.
That's all right.
So, point being, I took a meandering path, but the through lines have really been science and research. So like digging into the actual concrete data, and psychology and behavior change. So when I came back to the States, I was a studio manager, and it was so frustrating to like see people coming in, taking class, like making all this progress, then all of a sudden they disappear. And you're like, what happened? Like, did they move away? Are they just having a bad week? Did they get injured? Like, what's going on? You don't really know. So I sort of moved my business model. I stopped working for other people. I work for myself, and I moved toward doing much more coaching. So not just training, but also actually like opening up like some real dialogues around like, I'm going to be like, hey, did you do your workout? Not so that I can like shame you about it, but so that we can be like, okay, why? Like, what happened? Oh, you don't feel good? Great. Let me give you something else that will help you, recover or feel better, instead of just, pounding people with movement that isn't supportive of their life.
Yes. Oh, that's so, wow. There's so many things there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why people kind of fall off. They try a lot of different things, but if it doesn't fit exactly into, their life and what they want, then and this is me as well. I like, if it's not perfect, then it's not going to happen, and I think
I think a lot about giving people what they like, giving people what they need packaged in what they think they want.
Yes.
Because so many people, I just posted on my Instagram yesterday, I had one of my personal training clients hit a year with me. And when she started, she was like, this like makes me so uncomfortable when people say this, but she's like, I just want to have like your build. And I'm like, boo, you're 5'2". Like I'm 5'7", like 5'6", like that's never going to happen. But, she's like, I want to trim down. I want to like have lean muscle, like all the things that all the women say, like maybe not all of them, but many women. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. So she's like, she's thinking, I want to do cardio. I want to do yoga. Yeah. And we get in there, we look under the hood, and it's like, oh, you have chronic low back pain. You have like, this is, getting into, I tried to send her to a chiropractor so many times. She wouldn't go.
I know,
but
it's hard.
She had like horrible asymmetries through her pelvis, like chronic SI, like out of whack kind of stuff. And we've actually largely, I'm like, think about how much faster we could have done it if she'd actually gotten adjusted. But we've actually gotten things to like level back out and get a lot more symmetrical. I don't put, especially now because I only see people from inside of this box, but I don't put my hands on people. So I can't tell when things are out of alignment. I can't feel what's happening, but I can see the symptoms. So, she had all this low back issue stuff, all the chronic SI hip issues, like neck and shoulder stuff that actually resolved pretty easily. And I'm like, you need to do a lot of mobility work and she was also very bendy.
Oh, yes. Super
she's like
flexible.
Fold in half, palms flat on the floor. I'm like, you don't need yoga.
No.
Like you need yoga for your brain because she has like a very stressful job. I'm like, okay, we need to do like some meditation. There was like a span of like a month, I feel like, where every session she came in and was like ready to flip a table because she was like, this girl who works for me is doing this, and we just like laid on the floor for half of her session and like talked.
Yeah.
And she left feeling so much better than if I had been like goblet squats, deadlifts, like,
yes,
we do those things, but we do those things when her body and her brain are receptive to them. Yep. And, now she has like no chronic pain at all, which is, I mean, she also like, she went, as soon as we hit Corona, she went hard. She was like, oh, I have nothing to do but work out. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many things to unpack there, but starting with that one, it was very interesting as I was watching how people were managing Corona. There's some people that were, kind of similar to me where, and I think this was maybe a lot of business owners where we were all kind of in the, we have to now shift everything. How am I going to keep this business going? So I worked pretty much all day, every day. And my training kind of took a side note also because they canceled my, my event. So I was like kind of in depression, like,
yeah, like what's the point?
Okay, what's the point? But then I kind of got my act together and I figured myself out. But other people, I think, also just kind of stayed there and just haven't really come out of it yet. And then there were other people who were just like, yes, I have so much time, I'm going to train like crazy.
Right.
And they just went for it.
What's been so interesting for her is like, when I first started with her, not even kidding you, she paid by the session initially. I've changed my packages now so that everything I do is comprehensive. Like they
so
get,
good.
you know, all of the program, like they get lots of other stuff, but she was paying by the session,
Totally.
canceling 1 in 3 and paying for it. I'm like, I have a 24-hour cancellation policy. She would do training 3 times a week and just not show up to one of them. And that's so, you know, it'd be like, oh, I drank. You know, she also, because of her work schedule, was doing it really early in the morning. So it's like, oh, I drank too much last night. Oh, I can't get out of bed. Oh, I went to bed too late. Like, I don't feel good. I have my period, like whatever. And it took a long time to break through and be like, first of all, don't put yourself in that situation in the first place. But second of all, show up. Like I'm not going to like, if you show up hungover, I'm not going to kick your ass just to kick your ass. Like to be like, see, this is why you shouldn't drink too much before you train. It's like, no, you're going to come in and we're going to breathe. And I'm going to be like, keep drinking water. And like, you know, oh, you have your period? Great. Let's do a restorative yoga practice that is going to like calm down all of the connective tissue that attaches to your uterus. Like, these are things that we can do if you tell me. So she was interesting because as we went into Corona, her work schedule slowed down, but she like almost completely stopped drinking, ate so much better because she wasn't so stressed and overwhelmed with work. And she's like, I have nothing to do except go in your online studio. My online studio is kind of like Netflix, where it's like, you either can like open it up and just spend like your whole workout being like, what do I want to do? I don't know. Like, or she could be like, no, I'm going to just finish Netflix today. I'm going to go through everything that's here.
All to the beginning to end. We're going to do it all.
And I swear to God, I'm like, now I go to assign her classes. I'm like, I have to film more classes because she's done them all.
Oh my gosh. That's also very awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So tell me a little bit about how you determined that she kind of needed to do a little bit more on the strength side versus when somebody's super bendy. I just did a podcast on this yesterday talking about hormones and women in general and why we're a little bit more prone to ligament and tendon tears than men are. So strength is really important. So tell me why tell me a little bit about what you did and why you decided to do that.
So one thing that I think is super interesting that like science can't like put a pin in it. It's intangible, but my gut tells me that there's also a societal component that contributes to problematic postures in women.
Yes.
Where it's like, there's a lot more like archy. The one that kills me is like, you know, like the way supermodels stand and like pigeon toe in. Like women have that pigeon toe tendency and like the droopy knee, like the one knee that's like, and I say that because I had that. Like when I went through yoga teacher training, like it was the first time my teacher like looked at me and was like, look at where your kneecap is. Your leg is pointing straight forward and your kneecap is like the googly eye that's like going the wrong way. And I look back on that now and I'm like, okay, I think what's super interesting is a lot of this is like, we're developing the knowledge and the language and the training methods around this like very rapidly. Yeah. So even, 5 years ago, she said, look, your knee is pointing in. And what she told me to do was do like my standing forward stretch slightly externally rotated. So I wasn't pulling the connective tissue of the inside of the knee, which is fine as like an acute, just like, don't be in pain while you're doing this forward fold. But like, also, why the heck is my knee pointing in? Like that's not a birth injury. Like I wasn't born that way. That is postural. that's learned. And I see it all the time with moms where it's like the hip popping out.
Yep.
And like, you know, we talk to each other like this. I'm like, why do we do this? This sucks. Yes. And I do it myself. When I'm training people, I'm like,
yes,
on Zoom. So there's a component of it that I think men just are a little bit more culturally, you tend to be a little bit more upright, straight up and down, like square. And women are like, look, I'm so tiny. I fold in half. Like I have no stability. And it's like, oh my God, take up space.
I know.
So I want to add that to the part of like, yes, it's 100% the strength component, but it's also just like, what if you stand with both of your feet pushing into the ground and the crown of your head lifted and you're like, hey, look, I'm here. Like I take up space. And of course there's, you know, there's weight components, there's boob component, like a lot of girls, like when they go through puberty, learn to, to stop taking up space. Which I would be, do you see that?
Oh, all the time, the time, but for many different reasons. I mean, part of it is, you already mentioned this, like if you're a student, most people's like dominant shoulders automatically just sit forward. By the time you're 20, it just like, this is it. Like everybody pretty much has this pattern. So undoing that is kind of a big piece, but, and I think at some point it's really just hard to do that. Like, you know, when you start to get anterior head carriage, you can do things to try to bring it back, but it's never going to be back to like, if you had kept it nice.
If you never, like, I'm constantly, what stinks through Zoom is I'm like, I'm going to boop your nose. I'm going to boop your nose. Like pull your nose back.
You start to do this and you start to just cower in, you know, when we're on our computers all day long, like a lot of people have been sitting at home on their computers and watching TV. And
do you see stuff with the, this is one that I talked to prenatal women about. And again, this, I have not like actually seen any evidence of this, but I'm like leg crossing. You know, if people have a dominant leg that they cross.
Yes. Okay. So there's actually a reason why people do that. So, and some people will sit. So this is me. I will sit like mostly on my right leg. My mom, when I would sit at the dinner table, you know, I would do this. I would sit. I would sit on my leg. She'd see that my posture was off because I'm sitting like this, you know, but I would always do that. And she'd be like, can you please just sit properly? And I'd be like, well, it's more comfortable that way. And there's a reason for that. So your the way that your pelvis bones sit, you have your iliac, your ilium, and then your sacrum sits in the middle. It's a triangle bone. You know this, but just for people who are watching. But what can happen though is, and you've already referenced this, is that the hips these bones can shift and change. And I would say for a lot of people, you have these patterns. Like usually the left one will sit a little bit further back and the right one will sit a little bit forward. It's called like a left PI and a right AS and whatever. But what happens though is then we'll cross our legs one way because it feels a little bit more like it's evening ourselves out.
I was gonna say it like keeps your weight center.
Yes, because your body will always try to get back to center because your eyes are contributing to part of what keeps you aligned. So people's necks will be like this, but their heads will kind of do this. And then you get this like wiggling of their spine all the way up because the body's like trying to keep you, you know, centered. It wants even.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's so weird, but that's what people do with their hips. And they will sit in different ways to try to get their body back into some type of like even.
So do you think it's chicken or is it egg? Do they have this tendency to cross the leg because there's already an asymmetry in the hip, or do they create an asymmetry in the hip from crossing the leg?
Okay, I would argue.
And can you go backwards? Can you reverse?
I would say yes and no in both scenarios. But I would say people mostly change their posture due to already having their bones in a different scenario. Their joints are just sitting in a different way. So they will naturally end up getting into those different postures because that's already happened. And going back to what you said too about the why of, so why was your inner, you know, the inner tissues of that knee pulling that way? Again, You can adjust somebody all day long. You can have them come in 3 times a week, which I never do, but you can have people come in 3 times a week and keep them in there for 3 to 4 weeks and just be trying to, do it that way. But if you actually address why those bones are getting out, this is a terrible way to describe this. So if there's any chiropractors, please don't judge me. But if the bones are not, if the joints are not sitting how they should, which can be for a wide range of reasons,
Right.
it can be muscle tissues are tight. It could be ligaments are pulling intent, or are loose, which is another reason, like, especially for women, we just have looser ligaments. So we have looser joints. It's just how it goes.
Especially around pregnancy and postpartum.
And then, yes, when you, especially in pregnant, yes, which is huge. And people just like, women need to understand what's like happening because I think we would see a lot less injuries and a lot less pain if they understood why their postures really, really, really matter when you have a child and a baby that's growing inside of you, that's changing the way that your balance is and how you move and all of that.
Okay, so I have to tell you a story about this because it's like the most stressful thing to me. So like I am like I am so focused on like the body and the tissue and blah blah blah. And it's a separate story which we can get into if you want, but I was like, everything in my pelvis was like super tight and I did not create enough mobility during pregnancy, and my daughter was ROA, which for the listeners, she was lying with her back on my right side, which happens in like something like 17% of pregnancies. It's not the most common. Left is the most common. And it's associated with, apparently, this is so cool, your uterus is asymmetrical. So it's steeper on one side than on the other side. So if they're lying on that steeper side, they're flat down on their head and they go like this. And it can make birth more complicated because then you get a presenting part of the head, which is not the smallest part.
Yep.
And she was born with torticollis. So she was born with this head cock and constantly turning her head one direction. And I'm like, she's like 3 weeks old. And I'm like, she's ruined for the rest of her life. I've ruined her. Like all of these tissues are being formed. And like, we did chiropractic and like, it's a combination of things. You want to be adjusting, but also she has to build the muscle. Yeah. So I'm in my head being like, oh my God, we have to get her aligned. Like she has to constantly be aligned properly because she's building this muscle right now. And of course, if you think about them being asynclitic, it's like they're in utero. Their muscle is literally forming. Yes. Their bones, their joints are literally forming in the wrong position. And it's like, my baby.
I know.
Like
I know, but
her.
The body is so resilient though. And kiddos are so resilient. And those tissues are all like, they're just so flexible. They will fix themselves.
What's interesting is it's all resolved in her head and neck. Every time we go to the chiropractor, Atlas is great, blah, blah, blah. Her pelvis is whack. Every time I put her in the car seat, she's cocked. It's like so interesting that's, from, she's not even 2. Like from not even 2 years old, that's already, that preference is presenting. And I'm going to be like your mom. I'm going to be like, get your leg out from under you.
Yes.
Sit straight. Like,
yes. Yep. And
because I've had all the crap, like all the like not interesting stories for anyone listening, but like I have had a lot of crap with my neck and my shoulder and my hip flexors and like, and I'm like, I wish I had never done this. I wish when I like, my family comes from they're not super into chiropractic, which is like such a bummer that like whatever, but like I'm like, this could have been fixed. Like somebody could have fixed this when I was 12 instead of waiting until I'm 25, and which is how old I am now. Like I didn't start healing any of this crap until I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Sucks.
I know. Well, and that's the reason why I got into chiropractic in the first place is because I recognized that, so I loved gymnastics. I was really like my sister and I, we were really good at it. We were kind of at that next level of looking into going into middle school and then high school. And being able to do that as our sport. But my body was falling apart. Both my sister and I, like hips, knees, ankles, I was twisting them all the time. I was like trying to play soccer with the boys and I would just twist like, it was a disaster. My low back was starting to hurt, which is very common in a lot of sports where we have this, arching of this back and this extension. I mean, think volleyball, think water polo, think anything where you do this to load and then go forward. Gymnastics, same thing. You're extending so much. There's a lot of reasons why back pain is there, but think about my parents even saw a chiropractor at the time, but they didn't think about, us. And I would say that's not my parents' issue. I would say that's the chiropractors that were not speaking to my parents and saying, oh, your kids are super active. Have you ever thought about bringing them into the chiropractor? I just think that scenarios would be a little bit different, but similar to you. I didn't start working on a lot of my problems until I was in my 20s. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I think I could go to school and I could figure this out for myself. And then I could probably help other people. But just tying back really quick. And then I'd like to start talking a little bit about some relaxation stuff. And then also how to work with our breathing and techniques and all that. But the other thing I just wanted to say is that when you are trying to address why these patterns are happening in the body, a lot of it can just come down to, for example, I can adjust somebody, and if I don't look at their feet, if I don't look at how the rest of their tissues are moving and how they're functioning, they can walk out the door and walk themselves right back into the position that they came in for in the first place. So I think part of it is recognizing when we give exercises, actually do the exercises, because there's a reason why we're giving them to you. But also
or just refer them to someone like me, which is what some of my chiropractors, they're just like,
I should do that.
They literally, I get the problem patients. And they're like blown away. I'm like, well, boo, I'm with them for an hour. And I watch them do the thing. Like, it's miraculous what will happen if like someone is sitting there being like, now do this. Now do this.
I love it.
Also, they're additionally paying me a lot of money. So like that helps too, that they're like, oh, Kelly says to do this.
That's so good. Yeah. But strengthening for sure, especially for women, we want to do this yoga. We want to be all stretchy and flexy, which is so awesome for so many people, but sometimes knowing when to do the strength exercises to support the joints is more important than being super flexible. So,
but a lot on the person, but I think you're right. It's generally women who lean toward flexy things and need to do more strength things. Of course, the exception often is like really serious athletes who are like, no, I move in this one plane of motion. Like, don't make me move out of this shape, please.
Right. And definitely to that note, there's a lot of people who just get stuck in what their movements are. And then when you try to take them into actually what movements that would help support the movements that they do, for example, CrossFitters are always in more or less the vertical plane. I mean, we pretty much are always working in this scenario here. Yep. And sometimes you'll get a little horizontal, but never really in the transverse plane where we're twisting and moving and changing just the different areas and ways that we support not only the core, but a lot of other things as well. If you actually train in those scenarios, you can end up in such a better position and more strength and less injury prone in your, normal movements. So there's so many pieces to that, which is going to lead us into, you do a ton of work with breathing exercises, with core exercises, with helping people kind of understand when we need to be doing things like that. Also how to kind of rest and take some time to just decompress and all of that. So let's dive into core a little bit because it's going to kind of lead us that direction. What are some of the things that you think that you want to share with people about core strength, core exercises? Why is it important? What are your kind of favorites? Why don't you just take it from there?
So the biggest thing, like, your core supports your spine. If you don't have a strong core, the rest of this stuff is going to go off the rails.
Right.
Like if you don't have a trunk that can move through flexion and extension, side bending, rotation, then you are going to mess something up, right? So it's nice to like go to yoga class and like do a twist where you're like, let me just fall into this as deep as I can. But you want to make sure that you also have the core stability and the mobility of those muscles to actually use them in their full range of motion. So that's where we get into like, you know, I went to like reverse the car and I like threw my back out.
Yes.
Like that kind of a thing where it's like your core is, often I find people who sit at a desk, they have these six-pack muscles that are not necessarily strong, but are super, super tight. Mm-hmm. And they have no movement anywhere else. So I don't even remember what your actual question is, but here I go. The way that I describe like all chronic musculoskeletal issues come from something doing a job it's not supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And in the core, it's often the six-pack muscles or certain muscles of the pelvic floor. So like the like coccygeus, like things like in the back of the pelvic floor, like in this permanently tucked position where they're trying to stabilize and do the job of the entire core because we've overtrained them sometimes we've overtrained them. Sometimes we've just rested in a postural habit that keeps them really shortened.
Yes.
So the biggest thing that I like people to understand about the core is that it is absolutely imperative for stability and also movement in the spine. And it is big. It's not just your six-pack muscles. It is, the Pilates definition is very large. The Pilates definition is all of your back, all of your abs, your glutes, all of the seat muscles, all the muscles of the pelvis, the pelvic floor, and the thighs, so hamstrings and quads as well. So that's a pretty massive definition of the core, which like I find kind of obnoxious because it's like, so all we're not including is like your biceps and your calves. but I mean, right? It of course, like we know that everything's connected.
Yep.
So in a sense, like, yeah, your pinky finger is your core if you can think about moving your pinky finger from your core.
Sure.
Which is like a lot of, I say fun, my clients say annoying, but like a lot of fun to like actually play with, like, can I rotate my wrist from the middle of my back? Mm-hmm. And when I like, and then what does that feel like through my whole trunk when I do that? Better versus being like here and moving your hand around? Like,
sure.
Yeah. So that all of that said, the first thing I do with everyone in the core is just breathe.
Yes.
So the best way that we can create mobility in the core, in the pelvic floor. So when I talk about core, I really mean like pelvic floor, abs, low back. Like that's what I'm really talking about when I refer to the core. But the best thing we can do for the core is just start to get mobility. And the best way we can find mobility in those muscles is not to stretch them, to back bend, to side bend, to all of that. It's literally just to breathe and allow the muscles 360 degrees top to bottom of the core to move. Mm-hmm. So when that happens, it's like you're physically changing what the tissue, you know, on a like a molecular, not molecular, cellular, microscopic level. Like you're changing, like, that's not right.
How does that work again?
We zoomed too far in. Zoom out. So on like actually at the tissue level, you are changing like the pattern of the tissue and the way that it's laid down in the body. Right. And once you do that, once your tissue can actually expand and contract, then you can train it to be stronger. But you can't train it. It's like if you were doing bicep curls where all you did was this.
Yep.
It's like you're going to hit a ceiling on how strong you can make your bicep if you can't extend the arm and squeeze it back in again.
For sure.
And the pelvic floor is the same. The abs are the same. And obviously those muscles don't have nearly the range of motion that a bicep does, but they do have pretty significant range of motion. Like when you're sitting on a blanket or a soft seat, you should be able to feel your pelvic floor touch down and lift up, which is like more range of motion than I think most of us realize. That like it's, you know, like an inch, I don't know, distance, like it actually can move up.
Yeah. Yep. A question for you. Do you, because something that I see a lot in my practice is that people breathe a lot up here. They really don't breathe into their core. So, you know, and it's interesting because especially I think in times where there's a little more stress too, I just see as their shoulders just start to creep up towards their ears. And so they're breathing like essentially like this, where their shoulders are just all the way up here towards their ears. And they're just kind of breathing from like this space. Do you see that pretty often?
Totally. And interesting, we talked a little bit about like culture and the like kind of the societal impacts of women's movement habits.
Yeah.
Sucking in.
Mm-hmm.
Constant, where it's like, I have to suck my belly in because, I mean, I did it my whole life. Like, I am skinny. Like, but I did it my whole life. And then you go and have a baby. And like for 9 months, you're like, yeah, I get to let it all hang out. And then immediately afterwards, you're like, I have to suck this all back in so nobody thinks I'm pregnant. And when you suck your core in, one of two things will happen. Either you'll bring your pelvic floor with you. So you'll have that super tight clenched pelvic floor in addition to a super tight clenched abs, or often postpartum where people have kind of lost the connection to the pelvic floor, they'll have these super tight abs and be contributing to pelvic organ prolapse because there's no support and stability from the pelvic floor.
Got it.
Your body is, so like, I guess for the listeners, like the way that I think about and teach the anatomy of the core is like your diaphragm is the ceiling. And when you breathe in, your diaphragm draws down, and that creates a vacuum in your rib cage, which is what fills your lungs with air. And then of course it's like a trampoline. As soon as you let it go, it rebounds on its own and you exhale. Now, if you're clenching your abs in, your diaphragm can't move very much. And so you're going to start to like other things are going to move to try to like create more space in your thorax, in your rib cage. So when we let the abs go, we can drop the shoulders, which means we're going to have less neck and shoulder tension. And we can also get a deeper breath, which means we're going to have less stress. So what's cool is stress manifests in the body, but you can work it backwards where you can make the body do a thing and send the signal back to the brain that it's not stressed.
Yes.
Which is like so freaking cool. Like,
isn't that the coolest?
You're like, it feels very sneaky. Like, who built this system? Do they realize that they screwed up? And you can like, there's a loophole here.
That's the best part. It's supposed to be that way.
But when you figure it out, it's like, holy crap. You're telling me I don't, and this is like the people who don't want to come to yoga because they're too stressed. It's like, you don't have to de-stress to come to yoga. You come to yoga not to do the fancy poses, not to like do any of the things except freaking breathe. Because when you force yourself to breathe, when you intentionally send a signal to the body that it is safe and that you are calm, the body will be like, are you sure? And you'll be like, yeah, boo, I got you. And it'll be like, okay. And you can actually get all that stuff to let go.
And I don't really want to go down this road because it's going to take us on a rabbit hole, but it's the same nerve. It's called the vagus nerve, as you know. So when we breathe, it triggers that nerve. The thing is that nerve also communicates to our digestive system as well. So when you kick yourself into this like rest and digest place, it means that your digestive system can kick in and start doing its job and start communicating back and forth to the brain about different things. And here's an even crazier thing is that the bacteria in your gut can communicate through that vagus nerve to your brain, which is cool because they'll tell you like what you're craving. They'll tell you like, they're literally communicating to your brain what they want to eat. So
did you read the National Geographic issue about the microbiome?
Potentially. We read a lot of different articles in school, so I'm pretty sure I did.
It's recent. It's like in the last year.
Oh, then no, I read one previously, so I'll have to find it.
It's super interesting. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go find it.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. But for anybody that's also listening, you can go find that as well. But the bacteria in your gut can, if you crave a lot of sugar, if you crave like chocolate like all the time, I'll usually tell people that you're probably craving magnesium, but it also could be that the bacteria in your gut are just chocolate lovers. So if you stop eating chocolate, then eventually those bacteria will go away because they're not being fed, and then you won't have that like incessant need for chocolate. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but that applies in all food forms. But going back to what we're actually talking about today, the vagus nerve is one of the ways where your brain and your digestive tract communicate. So if you're breathing and you're activating that nerve, which we don't do enough, I think in some cases, I guess there's also a scenario where you could do it too much, but I think most people aren't breathing enough.
Yeah, I might not come as a shock to anyone listening. I'm like a super intense person. I'm like very tight. I'm very like,
I don't think you and I have anything in common.
It's just me over here. Super intense, super tight. And that always comes as a surprise to people. They're like, but you teach yoga. I'm like, why the hell do you think I teach yoga?
Yes, there's a reason why we end up in the places that we end up.
So I go into the chiropractor to get adjusted, and I'm like, my chiropractor makes fun of me because I have the strongest vagus nerve response to be like, literally like one adjustment and my stomach is like, and then like by the time I'm done, like my whole face is like bright red. I'm like so flushed, like just having like all of this like blood, like in yoga we would call it energy, but like
sure
all of this like release of like it's like all of a sudden also it's, you know, spinal too, where it's like all of a sudden there's like all this blood flow and nerve information and like whatever, but I like react. So I have such a strong vagus reaction to adjustments. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm like, I think that's actually why yoga appeals to me.
Yeah.
Because it was the first thing that I found that like really short-circuited my system and was like, whoosh,
yep.
Like you have to go into rest and digest. Like you have to like simmer, which breathing, we were saying breathing massages that nerve and like creates that sensation of like, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're safe.
Oh, I love it.
The way that so re-railing us, the way that intersects with movement and exercise is that if your body isn't going into rest and digest, your tissue cannot repair.
Right.
You know, when we exercise, we are intentionally damaging our body so that it recovers and so that it comes back stronger. But if you are not recovering, it doesn't come back stronger. You just get hurt. Mm-hmm. And if you're not recovering, you just continue to ramp up your nervous system, which means like inflammation, like all of your chronic stuff is going to be worse. So that's the thing that kills me when someone gets this was like the most annoying thing about writing health and wellness articles is like you do research and it's like every single study is like the cause of this thing is inflammation. Like this is caused by inflammation and everything is caused by inflammation. So it's like, well, then what's causing the inflammation?
Right. Well, but you've got
a lot of the time.
Yeah. You've got to identify where that's coming from for the individual.
A lot of the time it's stress or it might be. So someone gets, you know, a diagnosis like, I don't know, something heart related or you know, any of the things that are weight, like, you know, being overweight or being obese is often associated with inflammation. And it's like, oh, so your doctor tells you have to go work out. Now you're like, I'm super stressed because I have to squeeze another thing into my day. The workout I'm going to do is going to be running on a treadmill.
Which is so boring.
which is so, it's just like stressful to the system. Like your
Yep.
system is like, I must be getting chased by a tiger. This is the end of my life. Like
Sure.
you're just creating so much stress in your body, and you're creating more inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what doesn't happen when you're more inflamed? Weight loss. Like at least not as readily as if you're actually like down regulating the nervous system and taking proper recovery.
Right. It's one of the most frustrating pieces for me is when somebody I actually don't really treat weight loss in my clinic very often because it's so difficult because let me just say this, that people who usually are struggling with weight loss, there's a reason for it. And it depends on the person, but oftentimes it is due to stress. And I think in some ways, the reasons why is either due to job, it's due to something that they can't always necessarily change. And then you have to be very willing to change other aspects of your life to shift around that. And sometimes that can be really difficult. Also, it's very hard to tell somebody that's like working out, doing a CrossFit workout like 5 times a week, to tell them, I think I just need you to lay down and breathe for 20 minutes today.
Yeah.
And be like, no, you're crazy. So
and that's what I tell people when people start doing like my Reclaim program.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'm doing this program because I pee when I run.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop running. And they're like, you know, the emoji with the big eyes and the red, they're like, excuse me?
Yep. Like, what did I just pay for and what did I just get into?
Yeah. And I'm like, your body is, you can't keep putting the same stress on your body while you're trying to recover the thing. Like so every 5th week in all of my programs, personal training, everything I do every 5th week is strictly recovery, active recovery.
Oh, good.
It's like we do lots of rolling, we do lots of stretching, we do lots of meditation. Like it's not like, oh, we're doing this because you need a break. We're not doing it because it feels nice. We're doing it because it is actually progressing you in whatever it is you're trying to get better at doing. Just doing the thing you're trying to get better at doing is not going to get you progress as rapidly as actually recovering, active recovery, and getting your nervous system to calm down. Like you'll come back in. Like the cadence always feels really fun. It's like if week 5 is the yin week 3 is like where I'm like people are freaking blowing it out of the water, because it's like and of course, like each week 3 gets progressively stronger.
Right.
But you have to take the time off in the middle. And then it feels like when you're coming back, it feels like that first week, sometimes even into the second week, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. My body is so confused. Like, cause it's like, you're coming in like a fresh newborn baby into this movement. Like you've never done it before, because your tissue is different than it was a week ago.
Right. Yeah. Well, so and people I think often feel this when they go on vacation, if they're if they're CrossFit, anything. I mean, most CrossFitters will tell me this all the time, but they'll say like, I went on vacation and then like when I came back, I like hit those PRs and my times were so much better. And I'm just like, okay, so let's learn from this for a second. Okay. Like this is why I tell you need to recover.
Yeah. And of course it depends on the vacation, right? Like
some of them go on vacation and then they work out the entire time. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Or if you go on vacation to like visit extended family and that's a trigger for you. Like,
oh gosh, right. You come back more stressed than you left. Yeah,
or
you
you
need
come
a vacation
back,
from that trip.
You go on vacation and like you're, on a 7-day road trip and you come back and you're in fact like a lawn chair, like you physically can't. So it depends, right. But yeah, totally. Depend. You can, when you take the time off of the movement. And the other thing I always tell people is like I wish I could remember where in the heck I like got this concept and what the actual numbers were, but it's like the first X amount of time that you're doing something, that you're strength training a thing, is strictly your brain. Yes. All your training is your brain.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hit the point where your brain's like, oh, and then you go up, like your weight, your weight that you're lifting, your time, that whatever, rapidly increases. It's not linear.
Nope.
And people like will be so frustrated that they're like, I'm not getting any better at this. Like, I'm not lifting any heavier. I'm not getting, like, right before Corona, I was on the cusp of my first pull-ups.
Oh, so close.
And I don't have access to a bar.
Oh, that's really frustrating.
We like strongly considered, like, I keep asking my husband, like, well, like, if we got like really long fence posts, I'm like trying to figure out how I could like put a pull-up bar in my yard.
Yep.
But it's also Florida, and like it's just not worth it. So like,
no.
But
yeah,
it was months that I was just training my brain, training the movement pattern. What's cool is that a lot of that stuff I was doing it, well, I guess kind of because my ego wanted to do a pull-up, but I was also doing it because I know that yoga lacks pulling, and I know that my lats, my back in general needed a lot more stability.
Yep.
I'm not sitting around doing pull-ups, but like my shoulders have never felt better.
Yes.
My posture has never been better.
Yes.
Because
yes.
I like got, I at least it stuck. Like the changes that I was making, I was able to do it long enough. And I think I started working on pull-ups maybe in November. So like 4 months of just like pulling a band and then doing a lat pull down and doing an assisted pull-up. Like just that for 4 gosh darn months.
That's what it takes though, just like beating a dead horse of just like, I'm going to try to pull myself up. Just, it's not the same. You can do it so much more effectively and efficiently if you use banded exercises, if you do different types of training in different scenarios, you can get to that end product usually a little bit faster and definitely in a healthier manner than just like being on a bar the whole time and like trying to pull up.
Right.
Oh man, I was just going to go back to something that you talked about because it was so good. But yeah, training in all those different scenarios is really important. And I really like that you just mentioned that you also have to recognize in the different sports and in the different areas that you train, there are sometimes some movements that aren't there. And so like pulling in yoga, as you mentioned, having the strength through your back is so important. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have muscles and developed muscles through your back. Like I picture, actually there was a picture in one time with a bunch of bridesmaids. I was in one of my friends' wedding, and we for some reason were holding something up and they were like looking at all of our backs, and like it was so, at the time I was in chiropractic school and I was looking at the different bodies, as you go. And I had been doing CrossFit for years by that point. And like, you could see like my rhomboids, you could see like all of the, like the very, very developed muscles through my back. And then I was looking at the different postures of different people and of different women. And you could see how less muscle tissue, more muscle tissue, it just changed their posture entirely. I mean, you could see it in their neck, you could see it in their arms, you could see it everywhere. And I was like, okay, like, let's just take note of this, that really having strength through your back is important. And no, you don't have to be so buff, but to have some type of muscle definition is so important.
My husband, I'm going to let you in on a little dirty talk. He goes, your serratus is looking so jacked. I was like, oh God, thank you.
I love it. Oh man.
It's so true. It's like women
need,
and like now I go to demonstrate things and I like turn around and I like show someone and I'm like, oh my God,
you can see it.
But like I have and it's like cool to be able to, well, as an instructor, it's very helpful to be able to be like, so you're going to pull down and you're going to feel that and like to be able to put, but much more importantly, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have chronic shoulder pain anymore.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
Like that's nice. That's and like I can pick up my kid and like move around. I can do things that like really a lot of new moms physically don't have the strength to do without pain. We're all doing them because you're not going to be like,
I'm
no,
not
boo boo, like it can't pick you up. Like,
right.
But to do it without pain is like truly life changing.
I know. That's so good. Okay. Really, I want to talk about, before we kind of wrap this up, I really want to talk about meditation and how that ties into breathing, just kind of wrap us back around that way, because I think one of the things that was really helpful for me that I leaned into during Corona particularly, and I think still we're experiencing changes, and I don't know how long we're going to be kind of in this scenario of a lot of people kind of working from home, being at home, not really going out as much.
Did I mention I'm in Florida? I think we're just going to put up a border and like y'all are just going to be like, no, Florida, you're a different place now.
Right. I don't know how long we're going to be dealing with this stuff, but from a standpoint, I really leaned into yoga and meditation, and it's become so much deeper of a practice for me now. And I just find that in so many scenarios, I can tell when I need to just take a step back and go through like my routine of, okay, we need to breathe, we need to recenter. Let's do like yin yoga. Oh, one of my favorite practices right now is an hour of yin yoga right before bed.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited. I literally just got chills. Like that is freaking
my favorite is the thread the needle, you know, where you're laying on your side and you're just like this. And it's, it's the best.
The first time I teach yin in because a lot of the people who do reclaim are not, I keep calling it reclaim like everybody knows what that is. That's my postnatal, it's my 90-day postnatal program.
And you just started around, didn't you?
Yeah, it starts this weekend. Is our first session is this weekend. Exciting. The first yin class, a lot of those people are not yogis. They have no idea what yin is. The first yin class that we do, I'm like, put on your white noise machine, light candles, tell your family that you are unavailable. We do our workouts at 8 p.m. because that's when everybody can do. So that first session, it's like they all wake up and they look like they like need a cigarette. They're like, after that session, they're like,
yep, I'm going to go to bed now. Bye.
Yeah. It's like the most relaxed any of these moms have been since having a child. And some of the women who do this are like years into having a child. So it's
I know.
Insane. Yes. I love yin.
Best.
And oh crap, there goes that thought.
That's okay. No worries. I'll fill in for a bit while you remember. But yeah, so I think just being able to take some time, I'll do anywhere between like 20 minutes to an hour, depending on what's going on. I'll just shift it depending like as it goes. Yeah. And I don't just do yin yoga. I'll do a bunch of different kinds. And it was very funny, actually. My husband started to take up a little bit of yoga as well I had to restrain myself.
He's wonderful.
Yep. I had to restrain myself from trying to take pictures of one.
Oh, I have couples who I train both the man and the woman. And the woman will come back and be like, oh my God. So I saw my husband try to do a child's pose and I'm like, you do not get to make fun of him because you know what that's going to do to his nervous system? He's not going to get any better at doing a child's pose.
Oh no, for sure. It was great though, because one of the things that was so awesome was to watch as we went through, like he was starting to be able to, do a full, like forward fold. He was able to start doing better in a lot of different poses. And we just had a lot of fun with it, just doing it, side by side and growing together and all of that. It was super awesome. It was actually something that I had wanted for a really long time.
Yeah, right.
So I was really glad to be able to do that. But it's cool to see how the body shifts and changes. And also for me, the differences between a male and a female body and the you can physically see it a lot of the times, the difference in flexibility from two people who don't necessarily do a ton of yoga all the time.
Yeah.
But
that reminded me what I was going to say, which is you said like, oh, I have like, you know, the practice that I do every day. One of the things that is like one of my top goals with all of the clients I work with, particularly people who are on a short-term program, but in general, I want everyone to figure out what their minimum viable program is.
Yeah.
What is the sequence of things that you have to do every day? But if you do it, you know, for some people it's 2 minutes. For some people, like, you know, so I have people when they're in my Reclaim program, we have a 5-minute daily breathing and core sequence that they go through. And they learn it very quickly. They don't have to like sit in front of a computer and like follow along. It's like they learn it within a week, and then they do it when they lie in bed to go to sleep. Some people do it in the shower. Like, it's something that you can do every single day, but if you're doing it specifically in like core and pelvic floor dysfunctions, it radically improves results versus going to like a pelvic floor PT and never doing your homework.
Yep.
It's like, if we can break this down. So I had another client, an older client who had done pelvic floor PT for an issue. And every day I would be like, did you do your PT exercises? And she would be like, yeah, hang on. And she'd like go find her like piece of paper, print out, whatever. I'm like, no, like you need to do it every day to where you know the routine. And maybe it's not maybe it's not sustainable for you to do every single thing that the chiropractor or the PT or that I tell you to do, but you need to figure out what is necessary for you in order to stay out of pain. And for most people, it's not fancy.
Oh no, I give like 1 or 2 maybe max. Usually, because
and it's like lay on the floor for 5 minutes, the end. Like that's it for some people. I have a lot of people do static back, which I don't know if that's a universal term. Does that mean anything to you? Laying on your back, knees elevated on a piece of furniture at 90 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't even know what I call that. I think I just describe it to people.
So like laying on your back with your legs elevated on like a coffee table or a couch. I mean, I tell people if someone like tweaks their back, I'm like, oh, that's drop everything, go do that. Like 15 minutes, like literally as much time as you can give me, just do that. And then do like 3 other things. But so I work a lot on getting people to like, what is their minimum viable practice? And for some people, it's meditation. And for some people, it would never be meditation. And interestingly, you know, because I've been playing a lot with like things not being binary and not being black and white. Like right now, that might not be your practice.
Yes.
And just like your husband deciding that like, okay, now is the time to do yoga. Like you can decide in a year, in a decade, in a week that, okay, now I feel receptive to that. Now I feel open to that. Now it feels available and I'm curious and I want to do it. So the daily practice isn't meant to be static, but it's meant to be, it's meant to be the things that like, you feel good if you do this every day. And then, you know, maybe you say, okay, this is like a lot of time. I don't feel like doing this anymore. You drop something off. Do you still feel awesome? Great. Oh, everything started falling apart again? Put it back in.
Right.
Like, so you can, you know, it's dynamic. And I like for people to feel empowered to make those decisions. Like there are certain yoga poses that I'm like, I just don't do that. I don't need it. Like I decided that headstands were not for me. I'm like, I can do them. I actually just checked recently. I was going to teach a headstand class and I was like, I haven't done a headstand since before having a baby. I don't know if I still have it. I had it. But it's not good for my neck. Like I'm almost always out of alignment in my cervical spine. I have no business resting on my head. So I like you just as you can say, these are the things I need to do every day. You can 100% say, these are not things I ever need to do. And then one day you can be like, I really feel compelled to teach a headstand class. I wonder if I can still do a headstand. Ayo! Which I think that has a lot to do with having trained my back because headstands are actually a back exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you do them right and don't screw up your neck.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's actually really a great way to kind of probably wrap that up a little bit. I think that what I would love for people to start to lean into a little bit more is finding some like joy and curiosity about just their health journey in general. So meaning like seeing how your life shifts, seeing how, what are you interested in right now? Okay. Are you going to be interested in that 6 months from now? I don't know, but maybe you will be, maybe you won't. But when you
It
get to
doesn't have
that
to be
place,
right or wrong. Like you can just do
yes,
something now because you feel like it,
exactly.
and then decide not to do it anymore.
Right. Right. And I think picking up new hobbies, trying new things is something that can really benefit a lot of people. And if you get tired of, for example, I don't know, doing CrossFit and you want to try something else, get
Yeah.
into something else and give it a try. And it's not going to hurt if you want to include something like yoga. It's not going to hurt, if you decide you want to try triathlon. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many different things, right? That
I mean, you're telling
you can
people they have to have
explore.
so much confidence though. That's, I think, where we get lost is like,
Sure.
you get into this place where you're like, I'm a person who does CrossFit. This is what we do. We do CrossFit. And then they think like, oh, could I go do that other thing? I don't know. I'd be all alone. I don't know anyone who, like, those aren't my people. It's that the confidence in your capability to be able to go do something where you don't have a crew, where you don't have your people, is like terrifying.
That's true.
And I actually just listened. Do you listen to Brene Brown's podcast?
No, but I know I should.
I literally just yesterday listened to the first episode, and the first episode is called FFTs, which is first effing time.
Oh, that's great.
And we have to give ourselves so much permission to be in an FFT.
Yeah.
To say like, I have never gotten into CrossFit because I don't want to get over the hump of being in an FFT. I don't want to go and be like, I don't know what to wear. I don't know where to stand. I don't know what that abbreviation means. Like I literally accidentally, I didn't know it was CrossFit. I accidentally took one CrossFit class when I lived in New York, and I walked in and was like, and I just felt like, and she talks about this in the episode. If you go listen to that FFT episode, it's like, she talks about like the moment where you're like, this is bullshit. Yeah. Like it's not me. This thing sucks. Like,
yes.
And so I fully for years was like, oh, CrossFit just sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, CrossFit doesn't suck. I was in an FFT. And anytime I want to, I could go like name it, identify that it's a first time, like reality check expectations. That's one of the things I think as a parent, I've gotten, sorry, we just said we're wrapping up.
No, it's okay.
As a parent,
let's
I've
dive into it. Yes.
So much better at walking into a room and being like, this is what I need.
Yep.
Like when I was pregnant, I would go into yoga classes and be like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm pregnant. I know how to do this, this, and this. I have this injury. I'm going to be over here in this corner. Don't worry about me.
Yeah.
And I had never done that in a yoga class in my life.
Oh, how interesting.
I was in the middle of yoga teacher training, and my teacher went to like try to make an adjustment on me. And she's like, oh my God, your shoulders are like awful. Like, she didn't say awful. I'm sure she said something much nicer, but I was like, yeah, they've kind of been injured since I was 16. And she was like, I can't believe you even do yoga. Like, is that really painful? And I'm like, yeah, it is. But I just like, I didn't give myself any permission to be like, hey, I'm brand new at this. This is going to suck. Like, here as a student, this is what I would like from you. Like, and again, going full circle, like taking up space.
Right.
Like walking in and being like, this is who I am. This is what I need. And that's really, really hard.
That's so good. Yep. I love that so much. I've also been reminded too that as we go into new races, as we go into new situations, it's going to be kind of like doing it again for the first time, because there will most likely be a lot of changes. There will be a lot of like just different things because of all the stuff that's happening right now. And one of the advice things that I picked up on from somebody else was go into those races with no expectations. So there's nothing wrong with having no expectations. Low expectations is not no expectations. No expectations is going in saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how different this is going to be. I don't even know how my body's going to perform today, but I'm going to go in with the intent of doing my best and just seeing how things go. I'm going to try to make really smart decisions. And for it's same thing, going into a yoga class saying, this is how I'm going to do what I'm going to do today. That is perfect. That's exactly what we should, I think, always do. I think I would love to go back in time to me that started a business and be like, hey, just chill and just like let it happen, because you will get there. Just, I think I had so many high expectations of what I thought I could achieve and what I wanted to do and how I wanted things to be. And if I had actually just taken a step back and said, hey, I know where I'm going to get to. It's your first time with business ever, with no education. You have to learn all of these things. You legitimately have to become a different person.
The solution here is just, if people are up in their own head about like a race or a physical practice or starting to do CrossFit or starting to do yoga, all they have to do is go start a business or have a baby. Because those things will seem so small. You'll be like, on it, I got this. Like,
right.
Because I just had to go have a baby and I'm like, oh, this is what it feels like to be terrible at something.
Right.
Those other things are so easy.
I know. It doesn't get rid of the fear of it, like I keep thinking of what it's going to be like when I stand in that, in the funnel to get into the water for the first Ironman, and it doesn't get rid of the fear, but it's still a first that I really want to tackle. But
you started a business, so you can do that.
It's kind of one of those things. It's like, just put one foot in front of the other and you'll be fine. It's not the same as like, what do I do now? I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. At least with that, it's like, oh, you just need to like keep, one arm in front of the other and like, and bike a bit and run a bit.
That's pretty much the extent of my swimming skill.
It's just like kind of like that. Anyway, Kelly, this was so great. So you just started another round of Reclaim. Do you want to just give us a little brief about what that is, just so that in case people are interested, when you start your next round, they can come find you, all that jazz?
Yeah, I run Reclaim quarterly. The waitlist is open now for the November 1st cohort. So that applies for if you're pregnant now, or if you like, just if you're listening to this in the delivery room. No. So really, I say it's for women who are anywhere from like 3 weeks to 3 years postpartum. And it includes, everything is in a group digital format, but it includes one workout a week, one coaching call a week, and all of your workouts to do in between, which is through my online studio. So you get to look at my damn face so much.
I love it.
So people can go to, follow me on social media. You'll definitely find out about it that way, or go to my website, kellybryantwellness.com. Go to the postnatal training program and get on the wait list. And then the other thing people can do if they are not prenatal or postnatal is my online studio, which is called Replay, which I just renamed, and I'm very pleased with myself because it's regarding playing, but it is also full of replays.
I love it.
But my online studio has both live and recorded yoga, strength, Pilates, core classes.
So good. Oh, that's so good.
And there's yin in there.
Love it.
So just people are like, what was that
for me? What was yin thing again? Yeah. No, it's great. It's longer held poses for like longer periods of time. So it's great.
Super relaxing. So
awesome.
yeah, so those are my primary things. I have Reclaim and I have Replay. Replay is open all the time. People can join whenever they want. There's 7 live classes a week, new stuff uploaded into the studio all the time. There's like hundreds of classes in there.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. Hey, everybody, make sure to give us a follow as well at Dr. Kirsten on Facebook and Instagram. And please make sure to like this channel so that I can keep bringing more of these amazing interviews to you guys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of the Dr. K Show.